Growler, Superballs, Liger, Mule. Maybe it's a bunch of random words, but in fact they actually all have something in common, and that is that they are all hybrids. And that's what brings us into today's topic of hybridization. Is it a controversial topic in biology? Yes. Is it an important process that occurs? Yes. Great. But what is hybridization? Stay tuned with Ants Reptile Colony as we find out. To start us off, hybridization occurs in both plants and animals, but for today's video we'll be focusing on the animal part. So to get a general idea of definition of what hybridization is, it is when two different species or subspecies mate to produce offspring. These offspring are then referred to as hybrids, and they will exhibit traits from both parental species. The hybrids are often infertile and unable to produce offspring of their own, but it is not always the case. The reason for their sterility is usually due to their inability to produce sperm and egg cells. This is because the number of chromosomes differ between the two parents, which means they have an uneven number of chromosomes. They don't match up properly. But how does hybridization come about? Well, it can occur naturally or spontaneously in the wild, or it can be induced through captive or controlled breeding programs. Hybrids forming in the wild can be due to many different factors, including habitat fragmentation, which means that there is only a small population size of the species left, while captive bred hybrids are usually produced to exhibit traits that are favored by the breeder. One such trait is known as hybrid vigor. This is where the hybrid is better suited to survival than both or either rather of the parent species. Or it could be to produce offspring that just have more desired traits for animals in the pet industry, such as being more calm or having a nice color or something like that. Common examples of hybrids include the mule, which is a male donkey and a female horse, the liger, which is a male lion and a female tiger, and the growler bear, which is a grizzly and a polar bear. And of course there's plenty more. From the snake side of things, it's more often found in captive breeding, and that's when you have snakes such as the rat snakes, king snakes, and milk snakes, all hybridizing with corn snakes, as well as reticulated pythons, Burmese pythons, and blood pythons, all hybridizing with ball pythons, to name a few. As I mentioned earlier, hybridization is generally a hotly debated topic, which means it's time to get into some pros and cons. We're going to start off with the pros because it helps explain the cons later on. Firstly, as I mentioned as well before, is that the hybrids get traits from both their parents, so effectively they get the best of both worlds. And hybrid vigor, again, is one of the traits that is usually sought after in hybrids, and this is where the hybrid offspring have a better chance of survival than either of the parents, because they are often longer lived than their parents, as well as immune or resistant to some diseases. Hybrids can also form completely new species, which in a world where species are going extinct left, right and center might not be a bad idea. Now, getting into some cons. Hybrids not only are able to produce new species, but they can also lead to the extinction of species. And this species are often the parental species. And it can be achieved in two ways. The first is, since the hybrids possess traits from both parents, they get that hybrid vigor, which means that they can outcompete the parent species, potentially causing them to then go extinct. And even though most hybrids are infertile, not all of them are, which means that the hybrid offspring can end up mating with the parental species again, and thus muddying the gene pool and annihilating that pure line of a species. And because of this muddying or mixing of with the parental genes, that line then is completely lost, which means that that species is actually extinct. This of course leads to the decreasing of genetic diversity, because hybrids can also have a lower genetic diversity than the parental species. So even if they may be resistant or immune to some diseases, if they should contract a disease, it can spread really easily through the almost entire population and cause them to die off as well. This leaves a lot to think about regarding hybrids. It is a very broad topic, and this just scraped the surface. Remember, I only mentioned just a few points on hybridization and hybrids, and that was only linked to the animals. When dealing with plants, it's a whole new ballgame. Nonetheless, I'd love to hear your questions and thoughts on hybrids, so please feel free to drop them in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video and found it useful, please hit that like button, as well as subscribe for more content like this. I'd like to thank you all once again for watching. I really do appreciate it, and it helps the channel out tremendously. And until next time, remember, it's never too late to learn, and I'll catch you in the next one.